Hello and welcome to Strategic Cuisine. Today we're going to be making a deck building lasagna. So just wanted to go through all of the things that we're going to need in order to make this. We're going to want to have some Italian sausage, mild sweet Italian sausage is ideal, as well as some beef. If you don't happen to have any beef, you can make it with additional Italian sausage, which is what I'm going to do. You're also going to need a large can of crushed tomatoes, a normal size can of tomato sauce, two 6 ounce containers of tomato paste, 16 ounces or so of ricotta cheese. You'll want Parmesan cheese, as well as 3/4 pound of mozzarella cheese. You'll need 12 lasagna pieces. Should be able to get away with 1 box. Garlic or garlic powder, got fresh garlic here. Oregano, I've got fresh oregano. Basil, onion, fresh parsley or powdered parsley, dried parsley. 1 egg, some sugar, black pepper, and salt. Those are all the ingredients you're going to need. You're also going to want a large pot for cooking your pasta, a pot for cooking your sauce, and then either use the pot for cooking your meat or a second skillet. I'm going to use the second skillet. You'll also want a couple of bowls to hold your spices and a bowl for your mixing of your ricotta cheese. You don't need a large bowl for that. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start this dish by combining all of our spices and throwing them straight into the pot for the sauce. So go ahead and start with, if you have a fresh ingredient like either your parsley or your oregano, I'm using fresh oregano, go ahead and chop that up. You want it nice and small. So I'm just using here a rocky motion and pushing off to the side. That's my oregano. Now, if you're using dried oregano, just go ahead and throw in 1 teaspoon of dried oregano into a small bowl. Then you're going to measure in 1.5 teaspoons of basil. These are one of those things that if they're not exact, it's okay. So I'm just going to eyeball that. 1/2 teaspoon of fennel seeds. If you don't have fennel seeds are going to be in your Italian sausage, so you can get away without putting in fennel seeds if you need to. This will allow us to clear some space off of our counter. If you're using fresh onion, you'll want to saute it. But if you are using powdered onion like I am, just go ahead and pour it into the container. 1 teaspoon of powdered onion. Drop that in. Same is going to be true of garlic. If you're using powdered garlic, which I have here, you can just throw that into here. If you are going to chop it up, which is what I'm going to do, you'll want to chop the garlic up. Now, I do not have on hand fresh parsley, so I'm going to use dried parsley. Parsley is not a particularly strong spice, so the recipe calls for 4 tablespoons of fresh parsley. I'm going to put it and then divide it in half. So I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of dried parsley, which is stronger than fresh parsley, in here. The recipe then calls for sugar, 2 tablespoons of white sugar. Again, we're just going to take all of that and just throw it into the same little bowl. A teaspoon of salt. Now, you can either, if you're dealing with, if you've got salted sauce and salted tomatoes, you probably don't need quite so much salt, but you are gonna want some. So I'm just gonna eyeball it and crack some in here and grind up some salt. Not quite as much as it called for. If I need to, I can add some later. And it calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of cracked pepper. I'm just going to give it a few grinds of black pepper. All right, all of my spices are now in this one little bowl and ready to go into my sauce. So our sauce is gonna take the longest amount of time, so we're gonna go ahead and get it started here. So you're going to need to add 15 ounces of, the recipe calls for 2 6.5-ounce containers of tomato sauce. You can get away with 1 standard can, which is 15 ounces of tomato sauce. Go ahead and open it. Mine is a pull tab. And just go ahead and dump it into your pot. The recipe also calls for 28 ounces of crushed tomatoes. That's 1 large can of crushed tomatoes. Go ahead, open that up, and again, throw it into your pot. This one, you're gonna wanna take that lid all the way off, and we're gonna wanna save this container because we're gonna need it here in a few minutes. Go ahead and wash off and either recycle or throw away the container. So there go my crushed tomatoes into there. Now, at this point, I'm going to take my sauce blend, and ideally you'll want to stir this up a little bit, because if you don't, it's going to it could clump up and cause a bit of a problem. But you're going to be cooking this for so long, it's not going to be that much of an issue. So just go ahead, take this and dump it in. Make sure you scrape everything into your pot. Give it a good stir. You want to distribute those spices as evenly as possible. Before you put this on the stove, you're going to need to add 2 more things. You're going to need to add 2 containers of tomato paste. So the recipe calls for 2 6-ounce cans of tomato paste. So go ahead and open both of these, put them in, and then put this on the stove. Make sure your stove is set to medium low, so a 3 to 4. And then when it comes to a boil a little bit later, you want to turn that temperature down because we want to simmer this for an hour and a half. So go ahead and add your 2 cans of tomato paste. You'll probably need to use a knife to scrape the tomato paste out of the container. And then stir it in. Now this is going to be cooking for a really long while. So when you put it on the stove, make sure you put it on the back burner so that you can get to the front burners when you need to, because we're going to be cooking some more stuff on the stove. That's ready to go on the stove. Make sure you have a lid for this because you're going to want that. Go ahead and cover it and put it on the stove. Set it to a medium-low heat. This is going to cook for an hour and a half. So let's get it on right now. If you didn't use powdered garlic in your recipe, you're going to need to cut your garlic. So let's go ahead and do that now. The best way to do garlic is to crush it with the flat of a knife blade, and then you can just peel off the skin. Go ahead and do that to all of your garlic. The recipe calls for 2 pieces of garlic. I'm going to do 3. Ooh, that was way more than 3 cloves of garlic. Looks like I've got 4 here, 5. Well, won't hurt. Once you have your garlic peeled, it's time to cut it. So it's just simple up and down motion, slowly moving through your garlic. Once you've gotten all the way through, you can either turn your cutting board and then work your way back through the other direction on the 90-degree angle. This is how you mince your garlic. Or you can scrape your garlic up into a pile and do it that way. Okay, that looks pretty well minced. Go ahead and put the garlic into a bowl. And we're ready to actually hit the stove. All right, so we have our pasta sauce on the stove, set to a temperature of 3 on my stove. You can do 3, 3.5. You want to bring it to a simmer, but it is time for us to get the meat going and add it to our sauce. So I'm going to be throwing in my garlic, my 2 containers of sausage, and I'm going to want to have my skillet and a empty can that I can drain the skillet into, because this is going to have a lot of grease that comes out of it, as well as a slotted spoon. This will help me with draining the meat and transferring it to the pot with the sauce in it. So let's go ahead and get started. Set your stove burner. It doesn't really matter what burner you use for this. So set your burner to a temperature of medium high. You don't want to be too high because you're going to burn the garlic if you do. So you want medium, 7, and it's probably fine. So you will also want just a titch of olive oil because we're going to cook the garlic in the olive oil really super fast. To open this kind of container of meat, I recommend a pair of scissors. It's the easiest way to do it. There's one other thing that we can do at this point, and that is get our water started for our pasta. So go ahead and take a large pasta pot, fill it about 2/3 of the way up with water and a little bit of salt. Set it to boiling. Later, once it is boiling, we'll add our pasta. To prepare your ricotta cheese, you're going to need your egg, your ricotta cheese, your parsley, and some salt. Go ahead and dump the entire container of ricotta cheese into your mixing bowl. Once you have that in there, you're going to want to add about a teaspoon or so of salt. I'm just going to, a half teaspoon or so of salt. I'm just going to grind a little bit in. And then you're going to add your 2 tablespoons of fresh parsley. If you don't have fresh parsley, just go ahead and use dried parsley. I'm going to add my teaspoon of dried parsley to my ricotta cheese and crack in an egg. Make sure you don't get any eggshell in there. It's always a good idea actually to crack your egg on a second plate, and then you can make sure that any eggshells that fall off immediately fall off onto the plate rather than falling off into your bowl. Once you have your mixture assembled, it's time to actually mix it. Just go ahead and stir this all up so it's all nicely combined. And you do want to make sure you do a pretty good job of this because you have that egg and you have the salt and the parsley. So you want to make sure that it's all well blended because you don't want that salt to be all in one place, or you're going to bite into this and find you've got a bite of salt, not a bite of gooey, delicious, yummy ricotta cheese. There we go. That looks done. Once your water is boiling, go ahead and add your pasta. You'll need 12 sheets to do a full pan of lasagna. If they don't quite fit in the water, That's okay. They will really quickly soften up and sink down in. You're gonna cook them 8 to 10 minutes until they're not quite done yet.